Sports Show. I'm your host, Jacob Verde. Hope everybody had a good weekend, good Thanksgiving. LSU finished their season. Pretty much everybody's season is over, except for a handful of teams that are lucky enough to have made it to the college football playoffs, their respective conference championships. Obviously, the SEC is going to see Texas and Georgia battle it out for the gold. We'll break down our SEC grades for the week. We'll also be talking about the transfer portal. I mean, geez, it's popping. The season isn't even over, and it's popping. You got people joining all over. You got LSU player joining. You also got potential targets for LSU, former LSU recruits. I mean, some potential directions that you could see Brian Kelly and company go in. And I mean, they're talking about being aggressive in the portal. You see him leave the podium after his post-game press conference with one final message to everybody. I'll see you in the national championship. I mean, I'm sure you're ready to lock and get loaded. We'll talk about the NFL draft, who I could see opting in, opting out, who could come back. I mean, look, we got it all for you today. If you got any comments, any questions, any concerns, drop them in the chat. We'll get to them throughout the stream. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe button so you don't miss any more content. Without further ado, let's talk about Ricky Collins, right? Now, I'm not going to say this move is shocking because obviously, Nussmeier goes down, and who comes in at quarterback for LSU? It's A.J. Swan, and that puzzled a lot of people, myself included. We talked about it with G in the postgame show that we did Saturday after the Oklahoma W, and we were just like, man, that was a puzzling moment. I mean, what's the reasoning? Is it to sample the quarterback room and see what you got, see, the ceiling for A.J.? Either way, whatever the case may be, it had some fallout. And it's not to say that's directly related. Who knows? Maybe Ricky didn't get in the game because he had communicated that previously to a coach. There's a lot of things on the table, but here's what I think happens next. I mean, you can't change that. That's the fact of the matter. Ricky's in the portal, and he's going to go on to another school. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player. I think he could stay potentially in a Power 4. I mean, you got a lot of schools that are going to have quarterback departures that they'll have to address, and he's a very mobile guy, very promising talent. It definitely sucks to see him go, but like I said, what happens next for LSU? Well, there's two things, two clear-cut things. One of them being more than likely you're going to have to get in a portal quarterback. As kind of, I'm not going to say controversial as it is, because at LSU, you're going to welcome that in. The last two Heisman winners you've had, really your best two quarterbacks you've had in recent memory, both were from the transfer portal, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels. So, I mean, look, you could find a diamond in the rough, but the second thing, and I think this goes hand in hand, I feel like this is signs pointing to Garrett Nussmeier returning, and it's not going to shock everybody. We've been talking about it on the show for weeks, but I just think this is kind of the final piece to the puzzle that had to not necessarily be fit, but this was one of the dominoes that had to fall. And I mean, it could be also a part of the Bryce Underwood decommitment situation. I mean, yeah, the money's 99% of the reason why, but there could be a tiny percent of him knowing that job's not going to be his next season, and I think it's going to have to revolve around Mr. Garrett Nussmeier and his decision. Let's look into this mock draft. I'm going to give my analysis, my kind of grades on where I think their stock should be projected. This by no means is the standard. This by no means is where they're going to go. I mean, who knows? We could hit the nail on the head, but there's combine, pro day. There's a lot of things that you've got to shake out before you can really assess this. So this is our premature draft stock. Let me just say that before we dive into this. Here's who I think are LSU's first round and second round graded talents, in my opinion. Obviously, Will Campbell, Harold Perkins, Emory Jones. Now, in more toward that second round stage, I would say Garrett Nussmeier, Mason Taylor. I mean, you got about 5 options here that could potentially make life-changing money. All they got to do is opt in, accomplish a lifelong dream, just say simply put, I'm ready to go to the NFL, and I think they're going to be almost guaranteed a top 2 round spot. Now, out of those 5 players, you've got a very good chance to return 4 of the 5. I don't think you're bringing back Will Campbell. I feel like that's pretty understood. Top 10 grade. For a while, he was floating around top 5. I mean, whatever he winds up landing in, it'll be lottery. And I don't think his stock will necessarily get much better. Without a shot of a doubt, number 7 will be out of here, at least for Will Campbell. Now, the other number 7, Harold Perkins, there's a lot of things that you're going to kind of have to talk about, right? Let's talk about the injury, for one. I mean, I think you're going to have to begin to wonder, is he going to be healthy to test at a pro day, a combine? Those type of decisions, those type of fallouts, that's going to have a big impact on his stock. If he can test and show that he recovered well, he's still speedy, and At the end of the day, I don't think the film is going to worry a lot of people because you know what he's capable of. You've seen the athleticism. You've seen him get to the quarterback, him, be open to playing a variety of roles. And I feel like NFL teams are going to like that. Now, LSU fans are going to tell you that he wasn't used right, or he was supposed to do this or this. Whatever the case may be, I think it's pretty clear cut that he's one of the most talented players on the defensive side of things in college football, whether it be an ACL injury or not. And I think he's got a good shot of still being a first-round talent. So with Pert, it's going to be, you're going to have to get some pieces back before you can convince him. But I think all in all, if he returns, let's look at it from a schematic standpoint. If you run that 4-2-5 look that they've been doing, you've got Devon Keys and Whit Weeks as your main two linebackers. Now you can slide Harold Perkins to the star, and there you go, LSU fans. He's closer to the line. He could be more aggressive. People say that's his natural fitting role. Blake Baker saw it. They tried to transition him to it toward the end. Obviously, the injury cut it short. But if he returns next season, the development, the sky's the limit. That's all I got to say. Let's look at one of those other names, Mason Taylor. Obviously, greatest tight end in LSU history, simply put. He's done it all. He's got all the catches. He's got all the yards. He's got the records for his position. He's got a lot of huge moments that you can look back on. Obviously, the one everyone is going to remember forever is that Alabama 2-point conversion. But I just feel like he can continue to up his stock. He's in a spot where he might go to the second round, and he's not a second-round talent. He's a first-round talent 100% of the way. And, let's look at this. If he comes back, I think he can establish himself as one of the best targets in college football, period, because he had the second most catches on LSU, or for LSU this season. You got Kyron Lacy leading. You got Mason Taylor in at second. And in terms of production, I would slide in a close second, a close 2B, Aaron Anderson. But the fact that Mason Taylor is being looked at that much, Kyron Lacy's not coming back. Kyron Lacy's punching his ticket to the NFL. Mason Taylor could be one of the receivers that has the most chemistry with Garrett Nussmeier, one of your safest options. And, do you have fallout if Mason returns? Do you see a potential talented tight end and maybe a Trudez Green, maybe a Kamorian Pimpton slide into the portal? Who knows? There's going to be fallout, and I'm sure we're aware of it. But I think Mason Taylor coming back could put LSU's offense in a very good situation, right? Let's talk about Garrett Nussmeier returning real quick, and I think this will kind of gel perfectly with this. First things first, a year of development, like one more year. This was his first year starting, obviously. Let's get him in the offseason lab one more time. Let's get this, off our offense kind of a little more tailored to him. Obviously, they're trying. Obviously, they had some growing pains, but I think, through the small little failures and roadblocks that they've hit along the way, they've learned a lot of valuable lessons. And let's be real. There were struggles. Yeah, he's got the second most picks in the SEC, and you go on a 3-game skid, but let's not forget about what he did right. In terms of production, he had, I believe, the third best season out of any quarterback in LSU's history in his first year starting. He's number 4 in the country in completions, number 6 in the country in yards, and he's top 2 in every single SEC stat. Straight up, he could potentially be your best quarterback in the Southeastern Conference this year. The two teams that are going in the championship, Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. Carson Beck's throwing more picks than anybody, and look, it's tough. You're playing a tough schedule, and I'm not trying to say I do any better. And Quinn Ewers was in a spot where he got hurt and he wasn't able to produce as much as he was. You didn't get to see exactly the Quinn Ewers that you anticipated. I'm not advocating for Garrett Nussmeier getting all the flowers, but I think he definitely deserves some, right? Look, he's got the highest ceiling out of pretty much every quarterback I just named. If he comes back one more year, you're in serious talks of being a top 5, maybe even a first pick. It could sound crazy right now, but I think as time passes, as developments come, it'll make sense. And this is what's being preached to Garrett Nussmeier right now. There's a lot of things I'm sure being preached, and there's a lot of directions you can get pulled in, but the last message I want to leave everybody with is, Garrett Nussmeier is coming from a football family. His father knows a thing or two about a thing or two. He's a professional coach developing NFL quarterbacks on the regular. I feel like whatever decision Garrett Nussmeier makes is going to be the one that's ultimately best for him and his development. He's getting pretty much the best professional advice that you could be given. What would help Garrett Nussmeier, though? What would help that transition? What would help the development and just the overall success of LSU and that offense in particular, right? One last piece of the puzzle, the fourth name that I think LSU could potentially bring in and bring back, Emory Jones. It'd be a huge boost. You wouldn't have to lose him and Dellinger and Frazier and Will. You'd lose 80% of your offensive line. And, look, that would drive a lot of people nuts. You got talent, you're recruiting talent, and your offensive line coach is pretty much the best in the country in Brad Davis. But that's still a lot of work to be done in one off season. So I think, keeping Emory Jones, keeping that veteran presence, pairing him, I don't know what they do with the center position with DJ Chester. Do you try to get him to, hit the lab and just kind of grow? And I'm not going to say, completely turn over a new leaf, but he had struggles, a lot of struggles this season. And I'm sure he's not coy to the fact. But I think, just him being in this scheme for a whole year already, I'm not going to say completely just throw it against the wall and it's over with. I think that there is, merit in him developing and coming in another offseason and being able to grow. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if, a lot of that aggression that they're talking about in the portal is directed toward the offensive line. It'll be interesting to keep up with, that's for sure. We'll be breaking it down for you. Let's go back to that mock draft, though. Let's go back. I mean, we did the first and second rounds. I'll do a little more rounds for you. My middle round grades for your LSU draft prospects. I got Greg Penn, Garrett Dellinger, and Kyron Lacey. I think they can go anywhere from third to fourth. Obviously, they could slide up. But, I think it'd be a pretty good spot for them. Now, your later rounds, these guys all have to have some pretty good tests, right? And I'm not saying they didn't have good seasons. They had good seasons, but there's just a lot of competition at these positions. So, I mean, you have a good pro day. You have a good combine. You have a good bowl game. I think you're in a completely different situation. Now, these guys are Braden Swinson, Major Burns, Zy Alexander, Savion Jones, Josh Williams. I think guys like Swinson, Jones, Zy Alexander had a really career year. I mean, they were playing insane. Zy Alexander made a lot of big plays coming off of a big injury. I think he showed, the recovery went well. I think he showed his development is going well. I think he's a trustworthy guy, at least from that DB perspective, right? And then let's look at Braden Swinson and Savion Jones. A lot of people are worried about this defensive line at LSU. A lot of people were like, oh, my God, we need to hit the portal. We need this. We need that. Bo Davis is in. And I think Bo Davis, now I know he's a D-tackle coach, and I know he's coaching the interior guys, but Coach Peoples and just all the minds that they've had near this defensive line has made everybody better. All boats have risen. I mean, you can even credit Blake Baker to that fact. So I think Swinson and Jones, they have a very good opportunity to go middle. I think they can go third round. I think, if they test well, they could slide into a really, really, really good position. Real quick, before we do our SEC grades, a shout-out Happy Dad. You know the drill. Gluten-free, low in sugar, no artificial flavors, best taste and seltzer on the market, and you know where to get it. Rouse's, Walmart, Albertsons, or you can click the link in our description. It'll bring you to their website. You get 15% off with code Verdon15. You can cop the merch. You can cop whatever you want. You got cards, ashtrays, anything that you want. Happy Dad got. Use code Verdon15 for 15% off. Thank you again for the support. Let's move into these SEC grades. It's been a good year of being, I guess, the principal of the SEC. I mean, I don't know what my title is. I've been giving out report cards. Some have gone good, some have gone bad. And I feel like, just to end off this season on a high note before we have really nothing else to grade. I mean, we'll have the championship to react to. But other than that, I mean, it'll just be bowl games. And not every SEC team will be able to get one, unfortunately. But for the final report card, your final grades, if you will, for these SEC teams, it was an interesting week, right? Actually, let's not say this is the final grades. That's a great idea. We can have another segment next week where I'm going to give them their final report card. But for last week, let's talk about these grades a little bit. I'm going to go F to A. F, Georgia. I mean, look, let's get right to the point. How the hell do you go to 8 overtimes with Georgia Tech? Sure, it's clean, old-fashioned hate, and sure, it's rivalry week. I mean, look, I know all that already. You're the team representing the SEC in the SEC championship. You got a pretty good shot at winning it, I would say, as well. You're one of the most complete teams. You got a good track record of success, pretty much the best coach in college football. I would not have expected that. And you can't blame Carson Beck. 5 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. The defense for Georgia allowed 563 total yards from Georgia Tech. And they went down 17-0 at the half the week before the SEC title game. Now, look, there's two groups of thought here, right? You could say that they got their worst football out of them. It's over with. That was their bad game. Now they can go ahead and build from it and turn over a new leaf. But I feel like more than likely, Georgia is probably going to be a lot better. I don't know. I think it was just a bad week. You probably were overlooking them. They have a lot to play for. Their backs against the wall. But you can't do that in the SEC championship game. You can't sleepwalk, go down 17-0, have a horrible, crappy, just terrible first half, and then expect to still be in a shot. I don't think Texas is going to be able to do that. Let's talk about Vandy. I mean, deflating into the year at home, straight up. 10.5 spread. They tried to warn us. We did not get the memo. I was riding high. I thought that they've been keeping every game close except the South Carolina game, and naturally, that's what this game looked like. The South Carolina game. They lost by several possessions. Nico had a day for Tennessee, right? And it was only a matter of time. He was kind of having his woes, his struggles, but Heupel got him hemmed in, if you will. I mean, he had 4 passing touchdowns, 500 total yards of offense for Tennessee. Of course, Dylan Sampson has been Dylan Sampson and all over college football. I mean, touchdowns, 100-plus yards, 200-plus yards at times. It was a little too much for the Commodores to handle. And I think, in your last week, it's not really how you want to close out the year, but Vandy has a lot to look back on and be proud of. So I'm not saying this D is indicative of what they earned, but for the week, unfortunately, it is. LSU, I'll give them a C. It's a good win, but it's nothing I'm going to write home about, right? Your playoff hopes are dead. Your SEC title hopes, unfortunately, although they shouldn't be, are dead. You win Florida, you win A&M, I mean, let's just pick any. You would be in Atlanta, but let's not talk about that too much. 20-point victory, scored just about every way you could, pass and rush and kickoff. A lot of promise in the future, right? I think Dominic McKinley, 2 sacks. I mean, Brian Kelly called him unblockable. He's going to be a dog. He's going to be somebody. Pair him with Jacoby and Guillory and have fun. It's going to be exciting next season. Garrett Nussmeier, I think he showed a lot of promise. He had pretty much his best game yet. Kept it clean, really efficient, and I mean, he's been getting better and better as the year ended. So I think going into the offseason, if he makes that decision to return, we probably got one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Devon Keys, I think he showed a lot of promise, double-digit tackles, as well as his guy Whit Weeks. That linebacker pair is going to be deadly next season, I have to warn you. And Chris Hilton balled as well. A lot of growing pains. I mean, you got the injury. You got the early jumps and stuff for Chris Hilton, but he's figured it out. And he had 2 fantastic catches. Hell of a catch for the first one on that right side of the purple end zone. I mean, that was incredible. Whenever I saw him come down with it, I just had to rewatch the video I took. I was like, oh, my God, I can't believe he came down with that crap. I was hoping there wouldn't be no official review. And sure enough, got the 6 points. So number 3, another one of those people that I think LSU can be optimistic about going forward. I mean, your wide receiver room, you're going to keep Aaron Anderson, I think. Now, I don't know about C.J. Daniels. Obviously, Kyron Lacey's gone. Xavier Thomas is probably back. You got a young buck and Kylan Billiot. You still got the young buck and Shelton Sampson. You could portal in Mr. Micah Hudson from Texas Tech, who was recruited by LSU, but inevitably went to Texas Tech, and we're not going to rumor why, but I mean, look, you got some pieces, I think, and LSU, I don't know if I'm going to give them a C for their final grade. You're going to have to stay tuned next week, but it'll be an interesting decision because, like, you got a lot of potential, but then at the end of the day, you had a lot of letdown. I mean, we thought they'd be a lot more ahead of schedule than what they really are. SEC grade, we'll give Texas a B. Winning the Kyle Field, absolutely controlled the game. I thought the Aggies had a puncher's chance, but I think that they really kind of got muzzled. I mean, look, they had their fun. They got to scream, they got to shout, they got to do their little yell chants. I mean, they did their thing. Here's the thing about Texas. First, this is their first year in the SEC. They got the opportunity to be rookies and take over the best conference of college football. So shout out to them because a lot of people were down. A lot of people were saying they weren't going to be able to enter and do what they've been doing, and they did. Their defense is terrifying. They're second in the country in terms of fewest points per game allowed, 11.7. They're not even letting you score 2 touchdowns. They're letting you score a touchdown and a field goal. Maybe a little safety. Maybe a little safety on top of it. But no, all jokes aside, they're another one of those teams that is so balanced. It'll be interesting to watch them play Georgia because it's going to be the battle of wits, so to speak. Smart versus Sarkisian. How are you going to out-scheme each other? They're both in a very similar spot offensively, but, you know, I'm not going to say defensively they're the same. I think Texas has a better defense. Shocker. Hot take. I think Georgia's had the best defense in terms of the last few years, the production, the overall, output to the NFL. But right now, Texas has been kind of controlling college football. They're getting there. They're getting their brand up to the top. Who got the A, though? Perfect segue, talking about getting up to the top. Let's go, Shane Beamer. I mean, this was the win you needed. We broke the game down. We predicted the underdog victory. I'm not gonna toot me and G's horn a little too much, but we did try to tell y'all. This is the win that they needed to take over South Carolina, get the recruiting push that they need, really be number one, and simply put, look out, because I think South Carolina is going to be a program that could take over, not just the SEC, but college football. And I might sound insane, but let's look back on this one. I mean, Lenore Sellers is one of the best quarterbacks that I've seen in terms of younger guys just hitting their mark early. He had 166 rushing yards last week with 2 rushing touchdowns. If he can keep that up, get a little more offensive production through the passing game, this offense will be insane. And look, you don't got to worry if you're Shane Beamer anymore about having to pitch your school. Everybody saw how you played. Everybody saw moments like this in Clemson. And now if you're a kid in South Carolina, I don't think the flagship school is in orange anymore. I think you're guarded in black. I think it's the South Carolina Gamecocks. I'm not going to lie. I mean, we could talk about it in the comments. If you're a Clemson fan and you're feeling some type of way, I mean, look, we've had the target on our back recently. I'm not going to lie. We've been talking about the Heisman Award. We got Boise State fans pissed off. We got Colorado fans pissed off. I don't know why. I'm thinking Travis Hunter won the award. I mean, we've been keeping up with it all year. It's been kind of an up and down race. I'm not going to lie. At first, you see Ashton Jeanty, you're like, oh, my God. And then Travis Hunter's doing what he's doing on both sides of the ball, and the production got way better in terms of wide receiver. I mean, you got a lot of narratives. You got a lot of groups of thought. And I feel like everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and we welcome it here on this show. That's what it's all about. Got John Thomas in the chat asking, are you responding to comments? I mean, yeah. I guess this answers that question. Appreciate the support. Y'all have a good one. We'll be live again at 1 on Wednesday. Hope everybody has a good week. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. And y'all have a good one.